Good morning, my dear friends, and Afreilach and Hanukkah. It is Wednesday morning on the third day of Hanukkah, December the 17th, Chaf Zayin Kislev, 2026, 5786. Today's shir is dedicated by Mrs. Sarah Nechama Langer, Ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, Feivel Eliezer, Olav Shalom ben Binyamin Sheyichya, who was brutally murdered by terrorists, Yamach Shema V'Zichron Malkiddush Hashem, on the first night of Hanukkah in Bondi in Sydney, Australia. His neshama should have an aliyah and brachas and simchas for the family, and the learning should be Le'ilui Nishmosai, and alle Yidden zon sein gesund. Hashem should protect all Yidden around the world. We are studying the 5th chapter of Tanya, Perek Hey. In this Perek, the Alter Rebbe speaks of the unique connection, the unique union that is experienced between a neshama and the Eibashter, specifically through learning Torah. In addition to everything that's been said until now, in addition to the neshama being a chelak alakam mimal mamash, in addition to the neshama having Esther spheres which understand Hashem and which have emotions toward Hashem, in addition to the neshama in general fulfilling 613 mitzvahs, which are all chachmasay ritzonah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In addition to all that, there's something unique. There's a unique element, strand, specifically to the mitzvah of studying, Torah. We're referring here, some certain parts of the mitzvah of studying Torah can be understood without understanding, right? When it comes to Torah Shebechsav, Chumash, a person fulfills the mitzvah of learning Torah even without understanding necessarily what they're saying, just through reading the words. You can make the brachas, you can make brachas Torah and fulfill the mitzvah just through reading words alone. So that's not the part that we're referring to here in Perek Hey. We're referring uniquely to the aspect of understanding, of intellectually, academically mastering the ideas of Torah. Okay. So we started the Perek. I'm going to just review we didn't get too far. I'm going to review what we learned, and then Be'ez Hashem will continue. If you have an English Tanya, Perek Hey the lessons in Tanya, Perek Hey in my copy begins on page 91. Ula Tosefes Biur, says the Alter Rebbe, to add additional explanation. Ba'er Heitev, to explain very well, Loshen Tfisa she'omer Eliyahu les machshava tfisa bach chulu. We started learning this last week. When Eliyahu Hanavi describes that it is impossible for a human being to understand Hashem, he says, Leis machshava tfisa bach, no thought can grasp. It talks to Hashem. He says, no thought can grasp you, Hashem, which is a strange way of saying no thought can understand you. Usually when we speak about tfisa, when we speak about grasping, we speak about physical things, right? If something is small enough, it can be grasped. If something is too large, it cannot be grasped. In the case of spiritual things or intellectual concepts, or definitely godly existence, there's anyways no way to grasp it, right? What Eliyahu Hanavi seems to be saying is not just that no thought can grasp Hashem, but that no thought can understand Hashem. And yet he uses the expression to grasp. Les machshava tfisa. Alter Rebbe says there's a reason for that. There's a very profound reason for that, and the reason has not so much to do with the idea that no thought can understand Hashem. In that context, there's no need, there's no incentive to use the word tfisa. The reason why we use the word tfisa is the other way, because actually, although under normal circumstances we say that no thought can grasp Hashem, no thought can understand Hashem, there is an exception. There is a way that a thought could grasp Hashem, and that is how? When we study Torah. When we study Torah and when we fulfill mitzvahs. But again, what's relevant here is the study of Torah. Then we do actually understand the mind of Hashem as much as the mind of Hashem as the mind of Hashem has lent itself to be understood. We do actually understand the mind of Hashem because Hashem has explained Himself to us, as Hashem has been mitzamtzim, in the words of the Alter Rebbe in the previous parak. Hashem has been mitzamtzim, allowed His mind to be accessible to us in a way that we can understand it. So it is in that context, for that reason, over there the word tfisa is important to show on the depth of the unity of the connection between the mind of a human being and the ideas of Hashem. when we do understand Hashem's mind through studying Torah, it's because of that part that Eliyahu Hanavi uses the word tfisa to show how deep the connection is. Later on in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe will talk about this type of union that's experienced through a person's mind studying Torah. The Alter Rebbe will say that there's no such union in the world. The expression is B'hu yichud niflo. It's an awesome unity. She'ein yichud kamoyu. There's no unity like it. B'loi ke'erkei nimtza klal b'gashmias. You don't have such a unity between two things in this physical world, the type of unity that we're describing over here. So because when a person learns Torah, then the person does grasp Hashem. That's why Eliyahu Hanavi uses the word tfisa. Hine kol seichel kishemaskil umasik b'sichla is a muskel. B'chlal, in general, with intellect, right? With logic, with academia, with understanding, with seichel. Whenever the seichel understands any muskel, any idea, any concept, harei seichel toifes as a muskel makifei b'sichla. It's correct to say that the mind grasps the idea and surrounds it intellectually. V'amuskel, and the concept is understood. Nitzvus is grasped, umukaf, and surrounded, umalubash, and enclosed. B'soich ha-seichel she'isigo v'yiskiloi, inside this mind, inside this the seichel that has mastered it. So the Alter Rebbe is saying this: the mind of a person, when it masters an idea, masters it in such a way that it has complete ownership over it. Right? The simple, by the way, the very, very simple way to articulate this, to display it, right, is this, to display this idea, is this. There are very few things in this world that people cannot take away from us, right? A person has wealth, retmanished, your person can be robbed, their wealth can be taken away. A person has all sorts of things, family members, right? You have Rahman al-Islam. Things can happen in the world, may Hashem protect us, that's taken away from us too. A person has whatever a person has. A person has their health, Rahman al-Islam. A person can lose that too. Very few things in the world that we cannot lose. Once a person understands something, that's something that another human being cannot take away from us. Right? If I understand something, let's say, if I have a certain memory, if I have a certain perspective on things, so nobody else can take that away from me. But it's just an example. You have this. When a person understands something, they're the true master. If they understand it properly, they're truly the masters of this concept. In addition to the person's mind owning the idea, it's also true to say that the idea owns the person's mind. Why is that? Because thinking about something, intellectually investing oneself into something, is one of the few things in this world that when you do it, you cannot be doing anything else at the same time. Right? We can. Today we're gifted at multitasking because we're doing so many things at once. In the end, we're not doing anything at all. But in a person can do many things at once. You can walk. You can walk and chew gum. You can do all sorts of things. But when it comes to thinking about something, right, especially when you're thinking about something deeply, when a human being thinks about something deeply, actually in the process of thinking about this, they lose themselves in the thought of it, to the extent that they're no longer even aware, if they're truly thinking about something deep enough, they're no longer at the time even aware that they're thinking about it. That means the concept has such an ownership over the person that in order for the person to enter into, to master, to grasp this concept, they have to they have to give up the balabatishkeit over themselves to the concept and allow the concept to own them to a point that they forget about themselves completely. So both are true. Number one, the person owns the concept in a way that the concept is theirs completely. Number two, the concept owns the person in a way that the person is taken by the concept completely. Alter Rebbe calls this a seichel is that the muskel, the idea, is melubash b'toich ha-seichel, is enclosed inside the seichel. And the seichel is melubash b'muskel, and the seichel, the seichel of the person is enclosed inside the idea. So this happens when a person, b'chlal with any concept, right? This is in general the nature of intellectual pursuits. The mind has the ability to grasp, to own a concept in a way that it becomes theirs, owned by them. And at the same time, in order to do so, the concept requires the mind to submit itself to the concept completely. And this is true when a person learns Torah as well. Derech Moshel says, for example, when a person studies a certain concept in the Mishnah or in the Gemara, and they understand it, they reach a clarity of understanding. They reach a clarity of understanding where they understand it authentically and completely to the end. Any halacha in the Mishnah or in the Gemara. So both ideas are true. On the one hand, the seichel is toifus and makivos. On the one hand, the seichel masters, grasps the idea. And at the same time, while he's studying, while he's understanding it, the seichel is submitted. The seichel is given over, submits itself to this concept completely. Hine halacha zu, says the Alter Rebbe. Now this halacha that the person is studying, what is it? It is the wisdom and the will of Hashem. That it was the will of Hashem. For example, that if there will ever be two Jews who will come to Din Torah for an argument, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven will argue X, right? Reuven will say to Shimon, you're in my field, you stole my field from me. Shimon, kach v'kach, and Shimon will say, what are you talking about? You sold it to me. And Reuven will say to Shimon, but you have no proof. And Shimon will say, yes, that's true, I don't, but I can bring you witnesses that I've lived here for 3 years, etc. So was Allah b'tzonah shel Baruch Hu, it arose in the will of Hashem that in this particular case, the psak, the ruling will be kach v'kach. The ruling will be Reuven is right, Shimon is right, etc. This is the Allah b'tzonah shel Kodesh Baruch Hu. Allah b'tzonah. Af says that as the Alter Rebbe, Afim lo yhoyo v'lo yiyeh. And even if this particular story about Reuven and Shimon, that the Mishnah addresses, that the Gemara addresses, that the Shulchan Aruch addresses, even if it never happened, and even if somehow we were to know for sure that it never will happen, that two Jews will come to Bezdin with this particular set of arguments. Let's say it never happened, and let's even say we know for sure that it never will happen. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, doesn't in any way detract from the significance of it. Since this is what has arisen in the wisdom and the will of Hashem, that if one person will argue this way, and the other person will argue the other way, the ruling will be X. So when a person knows this ruling, and he doesn't just know the ruling, he also understands the ruling. He understands the logic for the ruling. Like a halacha, spelled out, clear halacha. In the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Poskim, so he masters, and he understands, and he grasps in his mind the wisdom and the will of Hashem. That under normal circumstances we say no thought can grasp Hashem. A person can, and because a human being cannot grasp Hashem, therefore a human being cannot grasp also Hashem's ratzon, Hashem's will, Hashem's wisdom. But the exception to this rule, when Hashem's ratzon and chachma enclose themselves in the halachas of Torah, the halachas that are articulated before us, then he could understand. And then his seichel is also enclosed in them, meaning the seichel is submitted to the chachma and ratzon of Hashem. There are the words. This is the essence of Perek Hey, is captured in these 3 lines. This is an awesome unity. There's no unity like it. and nothing even that compares to it. Nimtza klal b'gashmis can be found b'gashmis in this physical world. You don't have such kind of unity in physicality. That something should become such a deep and powerful state of union, mamash mikol tzadapina, from every side, from every direction. You don't have such a thing in anywhere b'gashmius. You have this only beruchnius, and even beruchnius, you have it only when it comes to seichel. And in this case, we're talking here about the unity between a Yid and the Eibishter, when the Yid studies Torah and understands Ritzoynei v'Chachmasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, this is what's written here. Needs to be understood. Needs to be explained. There's a lot here to unpack, but this is the idea. Again, we're talking about the extent, the unparalleled unity that exists between a Yid and the Eibishter, specifically when a Yid understands a halacha in Torah, since this halacha in Torah is Ritzoynei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the will of Hashem, and the person's mind actually understands it. So there is this sense of yichud that exists between the mind of Hashem and the Ratzon and the Chachma shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so let's try to explain at least a little bit. Let's try to scratch the surface over here. What is the significance of this? What the Alter Rebbe, so to speak, getting so excited about over here, and why this is so powerful. I mean, what's bottom line? We still don't understand Hashem's ways. Right, and when Hashem does things in the world that we don't understand, which happens unfortunately, and we still have to shrug our shoulders and say, what do we know? We are mere mortals. We are here today, gone tomorrow. Nistorim darchei Hashem loy machshavosai machshavosaychem. We still have to, shrug our shoulders and say, what do we know? We're but, like we say in davening and Rosh Hashanah Kippur, we are like, kachaloim yo'of. We're like a passing dream. And yet, there's something here that the Alter Rebbe insists is a type of unity that exists between a Yid and the Eibishter that is something completely v'mazakt, out of this world. So I want to try to explain a little bit the significance of it. What are we getting so excited about over here? So here's the best way I can think of to explain it. As usual, just the way my brain works, it's story-oriented, so it's articulated by a particular story. I'll tell you the story the way I heard it. I've heard it repeated in different ways, but I'll tell you the story the way I heard it. There was a Lubavitcher Chassid who lived in Eretz Yisrael, who was very involved in managing many of the Rebbe's activities in Eretz Yisrael, running institutions, raising money, working with people, etc. He was in a position of great significance, and was very active and involved in running the Rebbe's Moistas in Eretz Yisrael. On one occasion, he had the opportunity to be by the Rebbe in Yechidus, and he asked the Rebbe the following question. He said, Rebbe, in my line of work that this chassid was involved with, he said, I have to make a ridiculous amount of decisions every single day. Ridiculous. And very significant decisions. The decisions I have to make them to the best of my ability, how many of them do I get right and how many of them do I get wrong? I do my best. It's up to God. I do the rest is up to God. Of course, he writes to the Rebbe, when there are, we don't, now, ideally, the Chassid says, I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for the Rebbe. Ideally, I would love to have, the Rebbe on speed dial, so to speak, and every time a decision needs to be made, we got to ask the Rebbe, what do you want us to do? Azay. But of course, we know that that's not what the Rebbe wants. In general, the Rebbe doesn't want to be consulted on everything. The Rebbe wants us to decide. So we do our best, we decide. No, versteht sich. Every now and then, there are big decisions that are mamash completely beyond us. So these decisions we have to ask the Rebbe. Now, some of these decisions, he was in Yechidus. This is at some point, I'm assuming, during the 70s, right? So some of the bigger decisions that are not time-consuming, gesundheit, we write a letter, or send a telegram, or an aerogram, whatever they used in those days, and we wait for an answer. If the Rebbe answers, by the way, the Rebbe didn't always answer. We send the letter to the Rebbe, and we hope the Rebbe will answer. He said, sometimes we have to make these decisions that are, they're very significant, they're very large decisions. We don't have time. Again, this is before the days of email, before, whatever the case may be. If it's mamish urgent, we can make a phone call. But even with a phone call, the Rebbe didn't take phone calls. You'd call the secretaries, and the secretaries were at the mercy of the Rebbe's schedule. His question to the Rebbe was, clearly, Rebbe, I'm in position definitely to make an incredible amount of small decisions, and even some very large decisions, and even some very large pressing decisions that have to be decided on the fly. He said, Rebbe, what do I do? You hear the question? Rebbe, what do I do? We only want to be mechavan. We only mechavan al emes. We only want to do what the Rebbe wants from us. That's what every chassid wants, no more and no less. So we should be zocheh to be mechavan al emes, to do what the Rebbe wants. But how do I know? Not the Rebbe. That was the question. Now that's not a simple question, right? And I should tell you in all honesty, when I hear these stories, I sometimes, my own Yetzer Hara maybe, I sometimes wonder to myself, like, what could the Rebbe answer? So you would think the Rebbe would say something like, listen, do your best. And daven for siyata d'shmaya. So the Rebbe would say, make sure you go to the mikveh every day, make sure you say Tehillim every day, make sure, I don't know. Imagine yourself, by Chassidim, by the way, there was a Seder, when they had like just great decisions and crises, and they would go into Yechidus b'machshava. B'machshava, they would go into Yechidus. They would go to mikveh, learn about Chassidus, sometimes stand in front of a picture of the Rebbe, imagine themselves going into Yechidus. There's a very famous story with Reb Mendel, where he wrote a pan to the Rebbe b'machshava. He wrote a pan to the Rebbe b'machshava, and the Rebbe responded. The Rebbe wrote while he was in prison, while he was in Siberia. He wrote a pan to the Rebbe b'machshava. When he came out many years later, the Rebbe had responded. The Rebbe had sent his wife in London, Hapan Eskabel, I received your pan, etc. So there was a whole Eli Wiesel. So Eli Wiesel once said, it's connected to last week's parsha. He said, whenever he has decisions in life that he has to make, if they are, and he doesn't know what to do, if they are gashmiistic things, physical issues, he imagines himself consulting with his parents who were murdered al Kiddush Hashem in the Holocaust. And Eli Wiesel said, whenever it's matters that are related to Ruchnius, he does what Eli Wiesel says. He does what Yaakov Avinu did. He does what Yosef HaTzadik did. What did Yosef HaTzadik do? He imagined himself standing. He imagined himself standing in front of Yaakov Avinu, and he knew what to do. Eli Wiesel said, I do the same thing. Eli Wiesel, who do I imagine? I imagine myself standing in front of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's what he said. Right? By the way, the word of Yosef, that the image of his father came to him, wasn't just the way Chassidim learned. It wasn't just that his father came to him. The word is that Yosef understood that now he has to be machshava, he has to go in like a chassid to his Rebbe, to Yechidus, by the Nasi Ador. Anyways, this chassid asked the Rebbe in Yechidus, what do I do? I have decisions to make. The Rebbe could have told him all sorts of things. What did the Rebbe tell him? The Rebbe told him that every single day, before he starts his day, he should spend, I don't remember if the Rebbe said a half hour or an hour, studying Gemara. That was the Rebbe's answer. Every day, the beginning of the day, before you start with your decisions, start off for a half hour to an hour a day learning Gemara. The Rebbe said, and I mean that you should learn Gemara, like zulegen the cup, meaning like put your head into it and work your brain. That was the Rebbe's answer. It seems that the chassid was caught off guard by this answer. Gemara, ungechapt, half hour to an hour. First of all, it's a long time. Second of all, how's that going to help? The Rebbe chose to explain. The Rebbe didn't always explain, but in this case, the Rebbe chose to explain what the significance of it. The Rebbe said, why? What's Gemara? The Rebbe said, Gemara is Torah. Gemara is Eibishter's Chochmah. When you learn for a half hour to an hour every morning, when you learn Gemara, your brain will be trained to think the way the Eibishter thinks. What's Gemara? Gemara is Torah, but it's the intellectual part of Torah, meaning this is the Eibishter's thought process. When the Eibishter thinks, when the Eibishter debates, so to speak, questions and answers, what does it look like? Gemara. Rebbe said, you'll learn it. What you'll do is you'll be training your brain. You'll be nurturing your brain to think the way a Torah Yid thinks, to think the way the Eibishter thinks. Ubamela. Later on during the day, when it comes to other issues that have nothing to do with the Gemara that you learned in the morning, your brain will react. Your brain will process these issues intellectually the way the Eibishter wants you to, because you studied Gemara in the morning. Ubamela, whatever decision, maskana, conclusion your mind will come to, that will be the Ratzon and the Chacham of Hashem. That was the Rebbe's answer. Now, of course, the Chazal who hears the story understands that you need Nesinas Koyach from the Rebbe. You need the Rebbe to empower you that the Gemara learning should have this type of impact on you, of course. But the Rebbe's answer, the significance of it should not be lost upon us. I'll tell you why I think this is so important. Because in Chassidus we stress so much, the concept of Nasa v'nishma, Kabbalah Soil. What's Kabbalah Soil? Kabbalah Soil bitl, right? Do what you're told. Do what you're told because you're told. Who cares? Du verstehst ja, du verstehst nicht. You do understand, you don't understand. Doesn't make a difference. Why did he even get the Torah? Because they said Nasa v'nishma. What Nasa v'nishma? We'll do what the Eibishter says, whether we understand it or whether we don't. And it's 100% true. But it's only part of the relationship between a Yid and Hashem. It's only part. There's another part. The other part to it is where Hashem says, okay. It's true, says Hashem, I want you to do what it is that I say because this is what I say. But that's 612 out of 613 mitzvahs. There's one more mitzvah, the Eibishter says, wait, there's another mitzvah. The other mitzvah is, I want you to taka get it. I want you to taka understand. Think about what I'm saying. Not just think about what I'm saying, master it. You should be able to own it. You should be able to understand it. Hashem says, you're not doing, we're not doing this because we decided that this is a good idea. We're doing this because the Eibishter wants us to. But what does the Eibishter want here? The Eibishter wants that a person should actually understand. Imagine a marriage, right? So the husband and wife want things from each other, right? The husband wants his wife to, the husband wants his wife, to cook them, to make him dinner. The woman wants her husband to do what? To get a job. Whatever, they want things from each other, right? So imagine a couple, they sit down with each other every week, every month, every morning. Okay, give me a list of everything you want from me. Husband, we need you to get a job. We need you to make money. We need you to take out the garbage. We need you to pick up your towel. We need you, wife, what do we need from you? We need you to make dinner I don't mean to stereotype, to clean up around the house. I imagine both of them are very dedicated to the marriage, and they sit and they write a list of everything that the person wants, and they make sure they fulfill everything. You can't fault them on anything. They're doing everything their spouse wants, But they have no idea why. Why do you want dinner? Why do you want a clean house? Why? This is called a marriage. But I'm doing everything you said. Say that you're doing it. One day in the very near future, we'll be able to make machines that can do everything that can do all of these things. So what else do you want? What do I want? I want a relationship with you. What does it mean? One of the things that means is I want to be able to talk to you. I want you to understand what I'm saying. What's the difference? I understand what you're saying now. Tell me what you want, I'll give it to you. That's 612 out of 612 out of 630 mitzvahs. Eibishter says, I don't care if you understand why I want you to put on tefillin, why I want you to keep Shabbos. Who cares? Do what I said. 100%. But there's a 613th mitzvah, Moedik. Eibishter says, okay. In addition to all of that, I do want you to understand. Says the Alter Rebbe, the unity that exists here between this level of relationship that exists between the Yid and the Eibishter, when the Yid Taka understands, is unparalleled in anything else, for two reasons. First of all, if the Yid understands correctly, so when they understand it correctly at this point, they've Taka mastered, they've taken in, Chassidus calls this, Chassidus, the word that Chassidus used for this is a very powerful word. The word that Chassidus uses for this is pnimius. Pnimius means I've taken it into myself so deeply that it's now become a part of me. But not a part of me like two separate things. One thing is inside the other. No. Now my mind taka understands it. Or, it's like people will say, you'll sometimes hear people say, if you understand something, the proof that you can understand it is that you can reword it in your own words. Why? What's wrong if I say your words? No. If I say your words, doesn't necessarily mean that I understand it. In fact, if I insist on saying it in your words, you can almost guarantee that I don't understand it. The proof that I understand is that I say it in my words. But why? But if it's my words, then it's mine. Yes, of course, if it's my words, it's mine. That means I've understood the concept in such a way that it can become part of me. Alter Rebbe says, "Begashmi is in the realm of physicality. You have no such thing." Right? You take a pen and you hold it in your hand. No matter how powerfully you hold it in your hand, it's always going to stay something. The pen is never going to become me. Even Chas v'Shalom, if I swallow it, it's still not going to become me. And the other part to this is that Seichel, in order to understand something, Seichel also requires of the person to submit themselves to the idea entirely, to a point that they lose themselves in the idea altogether. Also, you don't find such a thing. In other words, you see the opposite extreme. If I'm going to understand what you're saying, I have to submit my mind to the truth that you're communicating, to the ideas that you're saying, in such a way that I let go of my way of understanding completely and lose myself completely in your world. These two extremes of mastering the idea completely in a way that it becomes part of me, and losing myself in the idea completely, where I lose myself completely, these two opposites together you have only in Seichel, the Alter Rebbe says. This is the unity that exists when a Yid learns Torah that you don't find by anything else. Okay. Then the Alter Rebbe goes on to add something. Also, it's like every one of these ideas, you can chew on it you can chew on it for 1,000 years. The Alter Rebbe adds something which the Tanya teachers are pointing out is very important to the discussion here. The Alter Rebbe is adding that it doesn't matter whether this halacha that the person is studying is practical or not practical. Doesn't matter. Either way, it's chachmas l'ritzon shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Say that. Now, we understand that. Why is that relevant here? It's incredibly relevant over here. I'll tell you why. Here's how they explain it. Lahavdil elef havdolis, human beings also have legal systems. Human beings also have legal systems with courts and law school and all sorts of legalities, v'chulu, with law books that can fill up libraries. So what's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference between that and Vimazok and Mishnah and Gemara? One is holy, one is not. Okay, but what does it mean? One comes from Hashem and one doesn't. Beseder, obviously. But what's the significance of that? So the word is like this. This is the way the Tanya teachers explain it. Regular legal human law is a law which is made to meet a need. There's a need. Human beings need to live with each other. And they need to live in each other and live with each other in such a way that they don't destroy each other. Each needs to live in law and order. So there's all sorts of questions that come up, all sorts of legal issues, all sorts of legal conflict that come up. So human beings are constantly addressing the needs that human beings are producing, which is human beings need a system of government that we can all live with, otherwise we'll destroy each other. So every other human form of legalities, every other human form of law and order is come as a response to a human need. But if there's no need, then obviously there's no law, there will never be a law in any human legal system that comes to address a scenario that doesn't exist. The whole thing doesn't make. not just it's pointless, there's no such thing. If we know for sure that no, Reuven and Shimon will never have any particular argument, then it doesn't make any sense for there to be a legal law for such a thing. Whereas by the Eibishter, it's the other way around. The Eibishter's laws, the mitzvahs, are not coming as a response to a human need. Verkehrt. What it is that we're learning emerges from the Eibishter's Chachma V'Ratzon. Ubemela, says the Alter Rebbe, what's the difference? Mali, what do I care if this will actually practically materialize or if it won't practically materialize? It makes no difference. Either way, the point here is that this is Chachmas Ritzono Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the way it was envisioned. This is Ola B'Ritzono. This is the way it took shape in the mind of Hashem. Now there's one simple question. Can I understand it? Yes or no? If yes, if I can understand it, then I've understood Hashem's mind. The human legal system, even if a human being has some kind of a chokhmah that they come up with, in the legal, in terms of human government. Sof kol sof, it's not really truly intrinsically the human being's unique innovation here. Again, everything is in response to the need. What do we need? We need for countries to get along. We need for neighbors to get along. We need to be able to pave roads. We need for people to be able to pay taxes. We need for people to be able to do business. We need all these sorts of... We need laws how to govern these things. Torah mitzvahs is not in response to how do we cater X, Y, Z for people. No. The other way around, right? Torah mitzvahs is the Eibishter's Chachma V'Ratzon as they're manifest in this physical world. This is what the Eibishter wants because this is what the Eibishter wants. So now sometimes the Eibishter doesn't explain why he wants it this way. He just says this is the way it is in Fartik, so we accept. Sometimes the Eibishter explains and says this is the reason why, this is the explanation of what it is that I'm thinking. And he explains it to us in such a way that even we can understand. And if we understand it, we now have a profound relationship with the Eibishter that doesn't exist in any other element. To explain a little more, right? Let's take the example of a human teacher and student. You have a human teacher and you have Rav Talmud in the human sense. So the teacher teaches and the Talmud understands. Okay. What the teacher teaches, now, if the Talmud understands what it is that the Rav is saying, so the lessons, the ideas of the Rav, they're being communicated to the Talmud, and the Talmud Taka masters them. Let's say the Talmud Taka understands them. So there is a very deep connection here between Rav and Talmud, because the Talmud is truly understanding the mind of the Rav, truly understanding the mind of the Rav. There is, however, a challenge. There is a deficiency in the mashal. There's a challenge with this analogy. What is it? In the case of the human Rav and Talmud, in the case of the human teacher and student, at the end of the day, what the teacher is teaching the student is wisdom. Right? So as much as the teacher is giving the student wisdom, this wisdom technically could have come from someone else. And fakert, the more the student understands the ideas that the teacher is saying, the more it's the ideas that the student has mastered, and not the teacher. Which is the reason why the teacher can walk away, and the student still holds on to the ideas. So in the beginning, while the student is learning it, the student needs the master to teach it to them, right? Teach me, so I'll understand. But once the student has mastered it, the teacher walks away, the student retains the ideas, and the student doesn't need the teacher anymore. Now there's a tremendous mile in that, there's a tremendous advantage to that, because now you see that the student owns it. Yeah, but there's also a deficiency, there's also a chisaron over there, because the teacher's walked away. And now the student maybe has memories that he learned it from his teacher, but maybe even at some point the student will forget who he learned it from. Won't take away from his understanding of the idea. The reason for that is because sof kol sof, the wisdom of the teacher is also not that the teacher truly made up this wisdom. It was something that the teacher understood, that he learned it from his teacher, or that he figured out from the world, or from... The wisdom already existed in the world. The teacher just discovered it. But here, in the case of Torah mitzvahs, in the case of Torah, says the Alter Rebbe, even if this thing does not exist in the world, it's here only because it comes from the Eibishter himself. This, in other words, this is true, a wisdom that has truly come from the Eibishter, and it doesn't have any other source. And yet it still has this advantage that when the person studies it, the person can truly master it to the extent that they contain within their brains the wisdom of Hashem. And in addition, at the same time, the person's mind submits itself truly to the wisdom of Hashem. And so you have this incredible unity. There is no unity like it. When we study this, it's supposed to inspire us to learn Torah. It's supposed to put within a light of fire under our chairs to go and to study Torah with great zest. When you think about what it is that's going on, right, that we're actually truly mastering, we're understanding the mind of Hashem, it's supposed to inspire us. The Zois, just read a few more lines, and we'll stop over here. The Zois, Maila Yisrael, this is a great Maila, great advantage. Gedolah v'niflo, great and awesome. La'in kates, infinitely great. Asher b'mitzvahs idiyas Torah v'asakasa, in the mitzvah of knowing Torah and understanding Torah, al kol mitzvahs ma'asiyas, above all other practical fulfillment of mitzvahs. Ba'afilu al mitzvahs atluyas b'dibur, even mitzvahs that one fulfills verbally. Ba'afilu mitzvahs Talmud Torah sheb'dibur, even like we said before, even sometimes you can fulfill the mitzvahs of Talmud Torah through saying words, but without understanding. That's all in one category. Now we're talking about the advantage of understanding Torah. The advantage is infinitely above all the other ones. Through all the other mitzvahs that are in speech and action, through all the other mitzvahs. Of course a person is connected to Hashem. But the connection is makif. Right. We need to come back to this. What is it, to explain properly? What does it mean? The idea is makif, right? But I should tell you, mamish one word. We'll call it a day. What does it mean? With all other mitzvahs, it's makif. Will be ideas, and when it comes to learning and understanding Torah, the connection is in a pnimius. What's the pshat? Imagine you have employees, right? Imagine you have employees. You want your employees to do what it is that you want, yeah. Yeah. You want your employees to do what it is that you want because you said so, or you want your employees to do what it is that you want because they understand what you want. You want them to follow instructions, or you want them to understand? What's the answer? The answer is it depends what you want from them. The answer depends what you want from them. If you have an employee that you hire to schlep boxes, right? Take the boxes from here and put them over there. The employee needs to understand something? Nothing. The less they understand, the better. Pick up the box over here and put it down over here, and then do it again and again and again. Schlep boxes. Then we're happy to pay you at the end. If you hire an employee that they should manage your business, that they should deal with your customers, that they should chvesos, then you need the employee. You need them to get it. You need them to understand. And if they don't understand, eventually you'll have to get rid of them. Even if they follow instructions completely, eventually you'll have to get rid of them if they don't get it. Says the Alter Rebbe, when we fulfill mitzvahs because the Eibishter said so, and we don't understand anything, it's makif. What's the pshat? It's makif. It's makif means the ratzon of Hashem is being fulfilled by us. It's what Hashem wants, 100%. But we ourselves, we're not involved really. We're just, it's the ratzon of Hashem that's being manifest. But it's very little in that sense to do with us in a pneumistic sense. We don't understand. We're not connected to it. For 612 mitzvahs, that's the way it's supposed to be. Then says the Eibishter, wait 1 second, there's another mitzvah. Which is what? The Eibishter says, I need to talk to you. Do you understand what's going on here? Du verstehst? They said in the Rebbe's Rishimus, it's written that the Rebbe Rashab once went to see Sigmund Freud. Very famous story. The Rebbe Rashab went to see Sigmund Freud. They had a long discussion about Chassidus and what it's meant to accomplish. The Rebbe Rashab told Sigmund Freud that the accomplishment of Chassidus is that intellect should control the emotions. Can you imagine? Sigmund Freud heard from the Rebbe Rashab that Chassidus is that intellect should control the emotions. I heard from my mashpiyim that Sigmund Freud said that it's not possible, that because intellect and emotions are so far apart, there's an ocean that divides them. And the Rebbe Rashab said Chassidus came to build a bridge. Chassidus came to build a bridge over that ocean. But one of the things brought in Rishimus that Freud told the Rebbe Rashab is that he should sit and listen to the Bochrim the way the Bochrim are chazering his mamorim. Freud told the Rebbe Rashab that the Rebbe Rashab should listen to hear the way the Bochrim are chazering his mamorim. Why? Because he told Freud that he teaches the Chassidus and then he leaves and the Chassidim chazer it on their own. Freud said, sit and listen to the way they're chazering it, and to the best of our knowledge, this was implemented to some degree. Why? What's the difference? And the Rabbeim repeated the story. That means there's something for us to learn from the story. What's the point? It means it was important. It was negeya to the Rebbe Rashab that he should hear that his chassidus, the chassidus that he's teaching, is being absorbed by the chassidim in a pnimius. Of course, the Rebbe Rashab knew that they were learning his chassidus. Of course, the Rebbe Rashab heard them. In other words, they told him that they were chazering his chassidus, and the Rebbe Rashab believed them, of course, but he didn't hear them actually process it. He didn't hear them understanding. He didn't hear them chazering it until he sat through the chazor and heard it. Of course, the Eibishter wants us to do what it is that he's saying. That's one part. Then there's another part that there's, in a sense, the Alter Rebbe says there's less yichud. There's less, let's call it a relationship. There's less unity in all the 612 mitzvahs. You do what you're supposed to do. Beseder, you do what you're supposed to do. But Kabbalah soil, yes, but there's not the same unity over there. Where's the ultimate state of unity? When the Yid actually understands the Torah that they're learning. All right. Thank you, my dear friends. To be continued next week in Metz Hashem. Everybody should have a Freilich and Chanukah and only brachas and simchas.